What's up, everyone? Welcome to Pat's Chat. I'm Doug Kide, joined as always by Michael Hurley. Michael, how are you doing on this Thursday afternoon at 2:18 p.m.?
You want to start with a hot take? Literally,
Sure.
it's too hot out. It's been
Says the guy
relentless.
in a hoodie with a blanket on
Well,
him.
so I'm in the basement, and it's like there's a 90-degree difference between my basement and my living space. As we've discussed in the early days of Patch Chat, there's a lagging catching up in the
Yeah,
basement.
it's true.
Um, but I go out, and it's like, oh, 65, like in the bright sun in the car is miserable. It's like you put the AC on, it stinks. And I just was in Florida. It was 85, 90 every day. It didn't bother me, but something about 70 degrees in Massachusetts sucks. And I'm moving north.
I love it. It's going to be 80 this weekend. It's going to rain a
Ugh.
little bit, but I will take it, even though it is that time of year where like it's kind of hard to figure out what temperature you want it to be in the car. You're kind of vacillating between shutting the heat off, having the AC on, then you're like, all right, now it's cold, so now I have to do something else. So that's a little complicated, but there's bigger issues in our
It's
lives to deal with.
disgusting. I want to move to like Newfoundland, Prince Edward Island. I want to just head north a
Wow.
good, like a whole, like when you're in school and you get the latitude lines. I want to move a whole latitude line north.
Well, on our live stream on Monday, someone brought up the idea of having Andy Borgalis train somewhere cold so that he's ready for it when it gets cold in New England. So
Oh,
maybe you could scout some football fields while you're up there, living up in Prince Edward Island or Newfoundland, and maybe you could bring him with you, and that could be
maybe.
you could do some I don't know, some freelance work, do a feature on Andy Borgalis.
I won't do that. But speaking of coming up with obscure places to practice, while I was in Florida last week, do you know what I thought about was the time that the New England Patriots, who are members of the National Football League, practiced at like Gulf Coast Community
Yes.
College before an NFL game.
Yep.
That's all. I was driving around looking at fields. I'm like, that's basically where the Patriots. They had to build a field goal. They had to build uprights with a net because they didn't have any.
It is true. When we were in Palm Beach for the owners meetings, we drove by that school multiple times, and yeah, a little odd in retrospect that that's where they picked to practice. A college without a football team or even a football practice field,
What school
but it
was
was
it?
a field of grass that was available.
What was it? What school?
Palm Beach, I forget.
Junior college, maybe.
I don't know. It'd be worth seeing maybe where Jordan Hudson was at that
Yeah,
time.
good. Yeah, definitely a top 10 bad decision from Belichick to go to that place, huh? That'll definitely stay with him for a while.
Yeah. So they were at Palm Beach Atlantic University.
Of course. How could we forget PBAU?
I wasn't there for that because I was on my national gig at that point, but many of my friends still talk about it to this day being at Palm Beach Atlantic University.
And it was directly next to the airport because all of the interviews took place directly under jet engines landing and taking off the entire time. It was incredible.
All right. Well, we are about to talk about the Patriots, break down their roster a little bit, give them some grades. Michael's also pulled up their grades from last year
Yeah,
to
maybe.
compare and contrast. We were at Gillette Stadium, or I was at Gillette Stadium today. Drake Maye spoke to the media, and so did Christian Ellis. Well, I was sitting down in the press room or the media workroom. Stacy said, and then we're gonna get Drake, and then we're gonna get Christian afterwards. And I had not been informed who was talking that day beyond Drake May. So in my mind, it was like, I doubt they give us Barmore, so I guess it's Gonzalez. And then after Drake May went, I was like, oh, it's Ellis. All right,
Wasn't it funny?
the third Christian.
First question: which Christian are you? There's okay. Just wanted to make sure because you didn't look like the other ones, but I just
Yeah,
wanted to make sure.
but he was good, and it's I feel like I barely covered the story at the time of the Raiders offering him a 2-year, $13 million contract, and then the Patriots matching it. Because when I saw that he had been offered that, I was like, well, there's no way the Patriots can match that. But it seems like he'll probably have a pretty big role on defense this year, possibly even starting next to Robert Spillane. I mean, for that money, you're basically a starting caliber player. So
Yep.
we'll get to that in a few seconds, few
Well,
minutes, whatever.
do you
Yeah,
want to just start with the Drake recap because I don't think that'll
sure.
take too long.
That's a good idea. So Drake May spoke to the media. He's pumped about what the Patriots did this offseason. He was asked about Josh McDaniels. mentioned that, he liked the offensive coaches last year, but pumped about Josh McDaniels as well, pumped about Mike Vrabel, just seems to be very happy with everything that's going on. But he also was asked by Phil Perry about the Joe Milton trade. And I would say overall, he was like pretty positive about Joe Milton. Like, yeah, it was cool to have a rookie. We like went over some things. But he did say that it's cool for him to get a chance to be a backup, which a lot of people on Twitter, I don't know if it's like, I don't think it's fair to say that they're twisting it, but they're like reading between the lines on it. I will say, being in the room, it did not feel whatsoever like he was taking a shot at Joe Milton. That's just legitimately like the reality of the situation. It's that like the Cowboys have three quarterbacks. They have Dak Prescott, Joe Milton, and Will Greer, and he's got a chance to be Dak Prescott's backup, basically.
Yeah, it was funny. It almost seemed like, oh, great job getting yourself traded to be from going from backup to backup. But I think that he did a good job, Drake Maye did, of doing his job, which is saying nothing, which is generating no headlines, clicks, radio topics, whatever it may be, because reading between the lines is kind of what everyone does. And that was the buzzer beater. So he might have let his guard down a little and maybe said something that might have opened it up a little. But I think also the implication there is more, well, Josh Dobbs is the backup here, and that's that. So he has a chance to be the number 2, which seemed to be a position that had been taken away from him here.
Right. And like he never had it last year either until week 18. So like it did feel like the Patriots were like, okay, we're signing Joshua Dobbs to be Jacoby Brissett's replacement. And it feels like you're not going to be happy being the number 3. So here you go to the Cowboys to potentially be the backup behind Dak Prescott. While we're talking about this, Ben Volen recently wrote that the Patriots got a pathetic return for Joe Milton when he broke down that they picked a kicker, a long snapper, and a cornerback. I just find it interesting that everyone has such different points of view or opinions about the value of a quarterback who was taken in the 6th round of the 2024 NFL draft. I don't know if a pathetic return exists for that. Like the Jets drafted Jordan Travis in the 5th round last year, and he just retired yesterday. Mm-hmm. Like I haven't even looked at which quarterbacks were taken in the 6th round this year, but I don't know. I can't really get on board with expecting a whole lot of return for Joe Milton still.
Yeah, it goes into, and it's different, but everyone thought that, going back a while now, when they traded Jimmy Garoppolo and got a 2nd round pick in return. Yeah. Is that right? Was it a second?
Yeah,
was it a second? Oh, that's pretty good. I forget because it blossomed into so many things, but everyone's like, blah, 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 all these things. They acted as if, first of all, Garoppolo was good, which whatever, you can have that debate. But they traded him at the end of October when his contract was up in January.
Right.
And it was like, that is a hell of a return for 2 months of a player. I guess the implication was like, oh, it's the franchise quarterback. You should get way more than that. But it's like, no, it's 2 months of a franchise, quote unquote, franchise quarterback. And then you got to pay him $1 billion. It's just getting to the front of the line with that contract. So I don't know. People's perspective on what quarterbacks are worth can be really warped. And I think the only way this one looks bad, I guess, right, is if, let's say Drake Maye, I always pick like the most innocuous injury because it sounds bad to theorize about it. But let's say he skins his knee and it really hurts. So he's got to miss 6 weeks, right? And Josh Dobbs come in and he just stinks. And meanwhile, Dak Prescott burns his hand cooking pasta. And Milton goes out and goes 4-2 and looks fun and good. Then you'll be like, oh, the Patriots really bungled that, I guess. Right. Short of that happening, they took the 9th quarterback drafted last year and got some asset for him. I don't think it was pathetic, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the quarterbacks that were drafted in the 6th round and later this year. Kyle McCord to the Eagles, Will Howard to the Steelers, Riley Leonard to the Colts, Graham Mertz to the Texans, Cam Miller to the Raiders, Curtis Rourke to the 49ers, Quinn Ewers to the Dolphins. Like, those are the guys this year that people decided were worth the same thing as Joe Milton last year. And I don't think that any of those franchises are going to be upset if they're able to trade in those quarterbacks for a 5th round pick next year. I don't know. Like maybe, who knows?
Riley Leonard, by the way, the only quarterback I've ever seen have a coach just be like, we're going to run you between the guards every snap and hopefully win a championship.
Yeah.
Just came
Yeah.
up short.
It's true. And I mean, I guess I can somewhat understand being like, they took two specialists with that pick, but it's like,
Well,
I don't know. Like if Borgalis turns into like Stephen Gostkowski, then there's like a decent amount of value in that return.
yeah, I want to know. I know Pro Football Focus does like the approximate value thing.
Right.
I don't know what the calculation is.
Yeah.
But in terms of like baseball, you have WAR, right?
Right.
And I think there's a chance, right? This kicker could have over the course, if he turns into an NFL kicker who
Right.
kicks for you for 8 years, his WAR is going to be tremendous. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm not going to go crazy and say they nailed it and got a kicker. Suck on that, Joe Milton. But it's there's certainly a value that could be gained from that spot. More so than if they drafted what? A cornerback who gets cut in August.
Just for comparison's sake, because it's two guys that we literally just mentioned, Stephen Gostkowski has a career AV approximate value of 49. Do you want to guess what Jimmy Garoppolo's career AV is?
Well, it's easier to stack it up as a quarterback. I'll go with 40.
It's 53. So like barely more valuable by that metric than Stephen Gostkowski.
Yeah.
And that's a starting NFL quarterback for like the majority of Jimmy Garoppolo, or at least half of Jimmy Garoppolo's career. So yeah, like there's like, and if Joe Milton starts as many games as Jimmy Garoppolo does, like it's a borderline miracle, I would say.
Do
If
you
he
know
winds
what?
up with 64 NFL starts.
Do you know what Joe Milton's approximate value is?
I mean, it might be 49 based off last year's game alone.
It's
Or maybe
one.
it's negative 49.
It's one.
Okay.
So Drake Maye is only 8. So he's only 8 times more impactful thus far. So we'll see. I don't know. I never got up in arms about that. Maybe that's why, we're not, sitting in lavish gold chairs because we don't know how to drum it up like we should be. We should be making a big deal of it and taking these people to task.
I do think it was obviously a really good idea to start the show with 12 minutes of Joe Milton talk. So
I agree.
Great job by us on that
Who
one.
do you think? Let's do pop quiz. I'll tell
Okay.
you the number one player in the first round last year because, Will Campbell's going to be an important part of the Patriots. Jaden Daniels had a 20 approximate value last year, by far the best in the first round. Who do you think was second?
Was it Brian Thomas?
No.
Was it
He had
Caleb
an 11.
Williams? Was it Caleb Williams?
He had a 12. Pretty good, but that would be third.
Wow.
It's like almost a trick question.
Oh, Brock Bowers. What?
He had a 9.
Okay.
Tough for those tight ends to tally it up. It was a quarterback.
Oh, was it Bo Nix?
It was kind
Mr.
of a
Nix.
trick question. Feel like a trick question, but your mind would never go there. He had a 13. So for whatever that's worth, I just looked because Joe Alt had an 8.
I'm assuming that Bo Nix, like I'm assuming we don't have any Broncos fans who listen to this podcast. But if we do, doesn't it feel like the most likely outcome of Bo Nix's career is to be like Mac Jones-esque? I guess he's got Sean Payton, so like he's got that working for him.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, character is a factor. We know Mac
Yeah.
didn't necessarily persevere
right.
in ways that you would want to there. And Mac in Jacksonville was brutal. So I would say, no, he could be better than that. I think you limit it. I don't know. There's probably a better comp for this. Like, remember when Mac Jones was a rookie? I remember specifically Phil Perry was on one of the shows and was like, he could be a Matt Ryan. And everyone killed Phil.
Yeah.
And Phil was like, he was an MVP. Like, what that? We were just so in like Brady mode, I think, that a lot of people were like, Matt Ryan, he's a loser.
There's a lot of Kirk Cousins comps back then too, I feel like.
Yeah, which I remember when they played the Vikings on Thanksgiving. I was like, boy, Kirk Cousins is way better than Mac Jones. What a ridiculous comparison that we used to make. So I don't know. There's someone like that who's like capable, not amazing.
Yeah, like a Kirk Cousins type or a Matt Ryan type. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's
if
probably
he turns
not
into Matt Ryan, that's a successful NFL career.
Yeah, that's probably higher than I would go, but I would say definitely higher than Mac.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's go position by position. The quarterbacks currently on the roster are Joshua Dobbs, Drake Maye, and Ben. I'm trying to come up with this off the top of my head.
Ooh.
Ben, I can't. Ben Wooldridge. Ben Wooldridge. My apologies to the Wooldridge family. So what grade would you, or what grade did you give the Patriots quarterbacks last year? And then what would you
Yeah.
give them this year?
So this would be the only position where I just went with the one guy.
Okay.
Like I didn't I just went
You're
with a
not,
B
you're not
last.
grading Ben Wooldridge?
No, and even last year, Drake May, I think what you had was a B, and I
Okay.
think what you have right now is a B. I'm not calling him a B player in his career, but I'm calling him going into the 2025 season a B, which is pretty good. I think
Yeah.
that puts you. That's in my mind. If you could be somewhere in like the 12 to 15 best quarterbacks in the league, you've made progress and you're on your way. So that's my thought as a B.
I think that's fair. I would probably give Drake May, yeah, a B for heading into this season. There's certainly a million ways that he could exceed that, but like just realistically looking at what he did last year and then saying like, okay, there's gonna be a little bit of progression as a whole, because I'm gonna do it as a whole. I
Mm-hmm.
think I would give the quarterbacks a B minus maybe, just because I don't know. There does seem to be a little bit of a drop off between Jacoby Brissett and Joshua Dobbs, right? Like, I know that's hard to say
Uh,
because Brissett did not play well last year, but like looking at the scope of their careers, Joshua Dobbs has never reached, I don't even want to call them necessarily like the heights, but like Brissett, I believe, has had like winning seasons or close to winning seasons. Like
close.
Joshua Dobbs, I think Joshua Dobbs is firmly a backup and maybe even like a more towards the bottom tier backup. Whereas like when they brought in Brissett last year, people were like, well, he's like a pseudo starter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even at the floor, I feel like Brissett was like a mid tier backup. So I don't know. It's just like the smallest step backwards. And then there was also obviously a step backwards between Milton and Wooldridge. So like as a whole, May will be better this year, but his backups, I don't think I would feel as comfortable with as I did last year.
That's fine. I don't disagree with that. I would just put it as if when Jacoby Brissett played last year, they were ass, and if Josh Dobbs were to play this year, they'd be ass.
That's
So,
fair. Yeah.
and by the way, Ben Wooldridge last year,
Yep.
quarterback for
University of Louisiana.
the Ragin' Cajuns,
Yep.
threw 17 touchdowns. So there you go.
That's not a lot.
That is double digits. It's more than a baker's dozen.
He didn't throw a lot of interceptions, which I think is probably like the value that they see in him.
He threw, let's see, quick math, 37 touchdowns total at Louisiana and 12 interceptions.
Right. So 12 throughout the course of a college career is not a ton.
And you know what? I'm going to cap the Ben Wooldridge talk there. We did it. You want to stay on offense?
No, I want to stay on Ben Wooldridge.
Okay.
Uh,
So his mom and dad met in high school.
yeah, let's just go like, yeah, let's go position by position. Let's
Okay.
go to running backs next.
All
So
right.
running backs, I'm going to run through them. The top guys would be Ramondre Stevenson, Trevion Henderson, and Antonio Gibson. Still got Terrell Jennings in there, plus everyone's favorite UDFA, Lan Larison, everyone's second favorite UDFA, fullback Brock Lampy. What you got on this group?
So last year, I went with a C minus because you really had a two-man backfield, right?
Yep.
You really had Stevenson and Gibson. I know Hasty was there, but he got the ball 20 times. A C minus because Stevenson had all the fumbles.
Yep.
They combined those two for 1,300 yards and 374 receiving yards. So really,
Yeah.
C minus might be a generous grade,
Yeah.
honestly. Right now, I have him at a C. They've gotten a little better, I think, with Trevion Henderson, but ultimately, that's a rookie who's going to be a part-time participant in the offense, I would assume. So I have them slightly improved, but still with the same two main players, not much better.
I might the fumbles are tough because like it's easy to say like, oh, I'm sure that'll be cured this season, but like, what's that based off of? I guess that's based off the first few years of his career, but we don't know that for sure. I think there's a possibility that Henderson like could get some like significant touches, like even like first, second down touches from the start, just because he's so explosive. But that's another situation where like we don't know exactly what he looks like in the NFL. So I was kind of trending towards a B minus. I think you probably talked me down to like maybe a C plus.
Okay. And we should say, because you and I, as you know, everyone probably assumes very good students in school. Always like a B was a disappointment when Doug or Mike got their papers back. C in this case is the definition, which is average.
Right.
So when
Yeah.
I say C, I'm not saying they suck. I'm saying those are NFL guys that have some strengths and some weaknesses. And so you average it out to a C.
Yeah, like none of those guys are among the best running backs in the NFL. I know that Gerard Mayo really tried to push that title on Ramondre Stevenson last year, but like it wasn't the case. And
Mm-hmm.
it's never necessarily been the case for him. So yeah, they don't have a Saquon Barkley. They don't have a Bijan Robinson. They don't have a those types of guys. It's possible that they will this year. It's possible that Ramondre Stevenson bounces back. It's possible that Trevion Henderson does that. But still, and Antonio Gibson is I think as far as like a third running back goes, he might even be like a, but I
Yeah.
think you have to look at it as a whole, obviously.
It's crazy last year. Stevenson, 120 yards in week one, never topped 89 the rest of the year.
Yeah. And I do think obviously offensive line plays a massive factor. So
Sure.
I maybe I'll go back up to B minus, factoring in how tough it was to run last year behind the offensive line.
Do
So
you want to go to O line next? A natural transition?
um no, let's go wide receivers next.
Okay. So I went with an F last year. I don't know about you. You had Booty,
Yep.
you had Douglas, you had some other guys, but those were your. I mean, Bourne once he came back from his
Yeah.
injury was there. It was really uh, tough sledding in terms of targets. Pop Douglas 87, Booty
Yeah.
68, and then Bourne 38. So that's what you were working with. You had two rookies that didn't contribute. KJ Osborne, a major disappointment.
I
Taekwon
guess you do
Thornton
have to go
made the
F on
team.
it last year. Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
an
I
F.
think that's fair. So
Um,
this year they have there's a lot. Javon Baker, Demir Blankhamsey, Kendrick Bourne, Keishon Booty, Efton Chisholm, Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, Mac Hollins, John Giles, Jalen Polk, Jeremiah Webb, and Kyle Williams. What you got this year?
it's going to sound harsh, but I have him at D plus
Okay.
because there's a lot of let's see. There's
Yeah.
a lot of you could make a case that McDaniels and everything that they've done is gonna they're gonna have a much better coaching staff around whichever rookie from last year
Yeah.
makes it, Polk or Baker, or both. I don't know. You could make the case for Kyle Williams, which I know you're a big fan of, and you have, but
Not
there
as
are
big as
still
all my colleagues,
I know,
obviously.
but
Yeah.
there are still like
Still,
at
I
this
like
point
him.
you have
Yeah.
raised
Yeah.
valid concerns about him. And Diggs, like if Diggs comes back and is like I don't know 85% of what he normally is, then your grade's not a D plus. Your grade is
Right.
much higher. But you just have to wait and see on a lot of that stuff. So as of now, I think you hedge it and sort of say, this is a, a premium position that this year's draft strategy was to wait until the third round to address.
Right.
And they addressed it in free agency by taking a guy coming off injury.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. And they did add Mac Hollins, obviously, who I always forget about, who I don't know. If he was on last year's team, he might have been the second most targeted receiver, probably.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think I would give it a C minus, be a little bit of a easier grader on this one. But like in the grand scheme of things, this is still one of the worst wide receiver cores in the NFL. So I don't think you can give it anything really higher than that. And I was forced at a social media point, I guess I would say,
Ooh.
to whittle down the Patriots wide receivers down to 6 players for my mailbag this morning. The guys I picked were Bourne, Diggs, Douglas, Hollins, Polk, and Williams. So I did not have Baker, Booty included.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
just
Diggs.
because, and that's not for me to say that like I don't believe in Javon Baker to be able to improve, but like he caught a pass last year. So until I see it, until the coaching staff puts him out there with like the first or second team unit, I don't know if you can really include him yet at this point after the additions they've made.
So you're just acting Mr. Hotshot. Like a 12-yard catch in week 18 against Buffalo wasn't very good.
Listen, it really showed a ton of promise, and like I do think there's a legitimate conversation to be had between let's call it Javon Baker, Kendrick Bourne, and Kayshon Boutte. Like Boutte is probably the guy that you can count on the most next year. But I like the fact that he was involved in multiple trade rumors last
Yeah,
week, I think was pretty telling. Bourne, you could free up a decent amount of cap space by cutting him, but like, do you know what team doesn't need cap space?
the
The New
Patriots.
England Patriots.
Yeah,
So if you believe that you have a more dependable option as your like number 3 or 4 in Kendrick Bourne, there's really no reason to move on from him.
I'm willing to accept it might be a fatal flaw for myself, but I just think the Patriots will be better if they can keep Kendrick Bourne. And
Right.
I get the reason there's a lot of mediocrity in that room, and I think he's better than that. Not amazingly better than that,
Right.
in that you can't just shed that for the sake of shedding that because you drafted guys in certain spots. And I have to ask you, I was paying attention, I was listening, but you named 6 people. So by the end, I had forgotten the beginning. Did you have Diggs there, or do you have Diggs on pup?
No, I have Diggs on there. I think
Okay.
like it's an unfair exercise to keep Diggs on pup. Like if you just have to like pick 6 guys for most of the season, I feel like that's the real exercise.
And you and your brethren, and what's the fancy word for sisters? I don't know. Brethren and
Mm,
bretherettes. I don't know.
yeah.
That's not correct.
No.
Um, you've only met Diggs that one time, and he
Yes.
was very, prepared and polished and everything. But just based on social media and everything, he doesn't seem like someone who's expecting to be on pup this year. I don't know about you.
Right. Well, I think Mike Reese made the point on the radio this week that like contract wise,
Right.
it would be bad for him to start off on pup.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that plays a factor as well, obviously.
And we've seen it here. This was granted ancient history, but Wes Welker getting hurt in week 17 suited up in week 1, which at the
Right.
time was unheard of, but has become a little bit more
For sure.
normal. And he had a great week 1, but maybe not a great season.
Right.
So I don't know how you weigh that out.
Tight ends, we'll do this one quicker. Jaheim Bell, CJ Dippre, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, G. Scott Jr., and Jack Westover.
I was torn last year between like a B and a B minus, so I went B minus.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, I said they're a B minus right now because it's more or less the same.
I'm gonna go B on this one.
Yeah,
I would even possibly.
really, you're gonna do it?
I'm not gonna go. I don't know.
Do it.
You want me to do B plus?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll do. No, I'll do B.
Mhm. Okay.
Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper is a very solid 1-2 combination. And if you're saying like a solid grade, a B is a solid grade.
Hmm.
And I think for them to move up into the B plus category, I would like to have a third dependable tight end. And they don't have anything even resembling that right now. Like Jaheim Bell, uh, anything they have him is a mystery. CJ Dippre and G Scott are undrafted free agents. Jack Westover was a UDFA last year. So like to move it up, I would have like a little bit better third tight end depth, I would say.
Do you know what's tough too? Is because the receivers were an F last year, the tight ends, it's like they were relied upon
Right.
more. But like Hunter Henry was a leading receiver with 674 yards. And if he had 674 yards when
Yeah.
some guy on the outside had 1,000,
Right.
that's a sweet offense. So
That is true.
it's everything's kind of downcast or sort of shaded a little bit more negatively. So I like Hunter Henry, and I
Yeah.
was pleasantly surprised by Austin Hooper last year. Um, I thought B minus was fair, but I don't hate your B plus that I made you pick at social media point.
Can I tell you something about Hunter Henry real quick?
Mm,
So I'm in a dynasty fantasy football league,
I'm just
and
gonna go get a drink, okay?
we have
You
a
tell
new
him.
member who did not know that he didn't have to cut players until after the draft. So one of the players he cut before the draft was Hunter Henry. So then the commissioner put him back on the league, like to be nice, to be like, listen, you didn't have to do this yet. We'll put him back on your roster. So I offered this person a 5th-round pick for Hunter Henry, and he rejected it and countered and asked for a 4th. I was like, brother, you cut him. And you're probably going to cut him after the draft. Like, you are not really in a good negotiating point right now to ask for more for a player that you cut literally 2 days ago. So we're at a standstill. I don't know. I guess I'll just wait for him to cut him again, and then I'll add him.
I have received your fantasy football story, and it has been acknowledged.
So offensive line, this is a long list. Kurt Burdow, Garrett Bradbury, Ben Brown, Marcus Bryant, Will Campbell, Jack Conley, Demontre Jacobs, Vidarian Lowe, Morgan Moses, Michael Wenu, Layden Robinson, Tyrese Robinson, Wes Schweitzer, City So, Cole Strange, Kanan Wallace, Jared Wilson. I can't imagine this group graded out very well last year.
I gave them an F minus, which is my lowest possible grade. I don't know if you could disagree with that.
I don't think so.
So this year, and I actually did a little bit of math. Like it's on this piece of paper. I did a little prep work. It was the first time for everything. I came out, and this might be optimistic. C plus.
That is optimistic.
I'll give you
Wow.
my logic. Okay.
Okay.
So I went left to right across the board. Now the wild card is Will Campbell if he can play tackle in the NFL. I put him as, let's say, if he's a B. Okay. And that's probably optimistic, but who knows? He's the number 4 pick in the draft.
Right.
Maybe he's fine, and all this hullabaloo was overblown, and he can be a fine, like if he's a B left tackle, that's a hit. That pick's a hit. Okay, your left guard, who's unknown at this point, whether it's City So, Cole Strange, Layden Robinson, if that's a D plus, whatever. Okay.
Yep.
Your Ben Brown and Wilson at center, right?
Or Garrett Bradbury.
Who did I say? Ben Brown. I meant Bradbury.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm always going to screw up a center's name. If they're a C, okay, there's a 75 grade. Your right guard, Mike Onwenu, B, which might be even undershooting it, which probably balances out the Will Campbell overshooting. And then your right tackle of Morgan Moses, a B. Right?
Yep.
You could quibble, but you have an 85, a 68, a 75, an 85, and 85. It averages out to 79. So that's a C plus. And if you can go from F minus to C plus, you're Mosian.
I'm gonna be slightly more pessimistic and give it a C, just because I think Campbell would probably be closer to like an 80 in my book, just because like sometimes rookie offensive linemen struggle a bit. So like I might bump Campbell a little bit down. The rest of it sounds pretty good. Like Moses might be a B minus. Like, so I would say C, but I like your optimism.
Yeah, and maybe like,
and I'm sure Drake Maye does too.
But like Onwenu could be an A minus.
That is true. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So there's
Cole Strange,
and honestly,
Cole Strange was a first round pick. You know, maybe it just takes Doug Marone to unlock that.
Probably not, but but D plus is probably low. Like if Cole Strange can be a C minus, and then your center could be a B minus. Like there's room for this offensive line to be functional, which is desperately needed. So C plus, maybe a little over the top, but we're in that range, both you and I.
Defensive tackle. Did you do defensive line or defensive tackle? How did you do this?
I did defensive line, and as I've stated many times, I struggle with not including edge. The amorphous defenses that have become the norm. I kind of kept it defensive line with guys that are mostly defensive lineman type bodies.
Okay, I'm going to start reading some names. So all of these will be in there. Christian Barmore, Joshua Farmer, Marcus Harris, Eric John. Oh, Marcus Harris was cut, I think, maybe. Eric Johnson, Willifred Penne, Jeremiah Farms, Javari Ritzy, Jaqueline Roy, Kyrus Tonga, Milton Williams. And then I'm going to assume you had White in there.
Keon, you kind of you got a little digitized there.
Okay, well, the other edge defenders that I have are Caleb Von Chasen, Anthony Jennings, Truman Jones, Harold Landry, Titus Leo, Elijah Ponder, Braden Swinson. I'm sure that you did not include some of those.
How about this? I have D-line and I have edge, okay? And edge just being pass rush off the edge.
Yep.
So the D-line last year, F.
Okay.
Edge last year, F. They were last in sacks, so
edge I think would have to be an F. Defensive line,
because you didn't have Barmore. That was like
Daniel Aquale, Dietrich Wise. Yeah, I guess I would go like maybe D for those guys, but I don't think F is Godshaw. So yeah, I might go like D plus somewhere like that, but I can't quibble that hard.
There was a lot of Jaqueline Roy last year, if I'm not mistaken.
There's a lot of Jeremiah Farms. He played like 400 plus snaps, so that's not when your run defense is as bad as it was, when your pass rush is as bad as it was, I don't think it's unfair to give those groups Fs.
Yeah,
but I might go a little bit higher.
Well, the good news is I'm really high in Milton Williams, so I went with a B for the defensive line this year, which that
Ah,
is assuming Barmore is back. And if
okay.
you can have Barmore and Williams, you've got a good D line, and you can work from there.
Yeah, I think B minus is fair. That is once again assuming that Christian Barmore will be healthy. If Christian Barmore's not healthy, like I think that's got to go down to like a CC minus, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't really have a second starter. It's between like Joshua Farmer, Jeremiah Farms, and Kairos Tonga. So that becomes a little
Hmm.
shaky. Yeah.
So yeah, dependent on Barmore, but there's a chance for major improvement. And I think that's when I was on with you and Andrew the other night. I was asked what position group had the most improvement, and that was off the top of the
Right.
dome. I said D line,
Yeah.
which might, the math for myself checks out. We'll see if it plays out that way. And then the edge, I went. It's still probably optimistic, but C minus. I don't know how much Harold Landry makes a difference. I know you're big on the Swinson pick.
Hmm.
I don't know that there's many more grand big picture changers in the mix there.
Yeah. I guess just to change things up a little bit, I might go now. I guess C minus, yeah. Because like Caleb Von Chasen can be a okay designated pass rusher. And Free Jennings is a really solid early down defender. I don't know how he fits in. Landry, once again, like more of an early down guy at this point. Swinson's a rookie. You don't know what he's going to look like year one. And Keon White, just like for 2 years in a row now, has not been able to put it all together. So I don't
Well,
think that you can give him a high mark.
I am big on what Mike Vrabel's going to do for him. He just
Yeah.
strikes me, and I've said this multiple times before. He just strikes me as a Mike Vrabel kind of player.
Right.
Sort of a no nonsense, wants hard coaching, wants to be better, has the size, skill, and talent, just needs maybe some help getting there. I like him having the year this year that we thought he was going to have last year.
Definitely. So then we go to linebackers. Aforementioned Christian Ellis, Jack Gibbons, Cam Riley, Monty Rice, Robert Spillane, and Jelani Tavai.
I struggled with this one. I'll be honest. I went with a C for last year,
Hmm.
possibly too high,
I think that's a
but
little too high. I might go like D or D plus last year.
okay. And I'm not gonna even try to
It's like
argue against that.
Raekwon McMillan. Um, Juwan Bentley didn't really play. Tavai really struggled.
Yeah.
Ellis
They
was
also,
fine. Yeah.
I mean, Jabril Peppers is a safety,
Right.
but is he? And he didn't play for most of the year,
Right.
so it was kind of, yeah. Their weaknesses were shown. So yeah, D plus last year. I don't know how much their additions, like how much they changed that pick. I went C last year, C this year. Maybe it's
I think
just
C's
about the
fair.
same.
Like they don't have a superstar in that group. I think that Robert Spillane was a solid addition. I think Ellis can be better. Jack Gibbons is a good third linebacker. Jelani Tavai, I mean, I'm a little surprised he's still on the team. I think he's still on the team because if they cut him, it literally subtracts cap space. But
Hmm.
similar to what I was saying about Kendrick Bourne, like the Patriots have a lot of cap space. I wouldn't necessarily hesitate to move on from guys, even if it like takes away some cap space for you. Because
Yeah,
I just don't really understand how Devy fits onto this roster unless the Patriots plan to play him more on the edge this season.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you Jelani Tavai was very good last year. He led the team in tackles by 15 plus 19, which is 34, I believe. So he had 115 tackles, which was most on the team. Duggar was second with 81, and that's combined. Solo was closer. He had 58. Duggar had 55. I don't know that that's a tell-all stat, but it shows that he was involved. He played a lot, and he probably had the busiest year of his career. 5 pass defenses too.
I generally like Tavai's a good guy and everything like he's a fine human
Well,
being.
he really screwed things up at the end of last year.
He
I'll say
did.
that.
But like if you're looking like if you look at this Patriots defense and you say they want smaller, more athletic, speedy linebackers,
Yeah.
July Tavai in 2019 ran a 4.8640 at 246 pounds. Like he is the prototypical Matt Patricia, Bill Belichick linebacker. But I do think he has the ability to play on the edge. So like if they want to keep him to make sure that Anthony Jennings stays healthy or that Harold Landry stays healthy, I could see them moving him to the edge and allowing him to play that position. So like I think that's another reason why he's still on the roster, because as an inside linebacker, I do not think he fits very well.
In terms of draft capital, draft value, we talked about earlier. So Jelani Tavai went 43rd overall, and he has
Yes.
an approximate value of 31. Just so you know,
Yep.
Joanne Williams, as we know, went a couple picks later. And if we just keep scroll, there's AJ Brown
Oh
there at
God.
51.
Oh
Whoopsie
Jesus.
daisy.
Yeah.
The
Oops.
league might have made a mistake there.
All right. So at cornerback, we got Alex Austin Miles, battle Isaiah Bolden, Carlton Davis, Brandon Crossley, Marcellus Dial, Christian Gonzalez, DJ James, Marcus Jones, and Kobe Minor. What are you
Yeah,
thinking here?
I can be quick. Last year I gave them a B because Gonzalez was an A and the supporting cast was a C in what's the word? In aggregate, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And this year they're a B plus because Carlton Davis makes that aggregate a little bit better.
I think that's pretty solid. I have some questions about who's going to play in the slot. I think at this point, Marcus Jones probably makes the most sense, but I would prefer to have. I might go B just because I prefer to have a little bit more guaranteed depth at cornerback, and it feels like there's some pretty significant questions after Gonzalez and Davis in this group, in my opinion.
Yeah, but
But yeah,
ultimately having an A
yes,
is a very good thing,
and
and that
Carlton Davis is a very good number two to have across from him.
yeah,
So
I think it helps.
safety.
Um,
Kyle Duggar, Marcus Epps, Jalen Hawkins, Marte Mapu, Josh Minkins, Jabril Peppers, Del Pettis, Jordan Polk, Brendan Schooler, Craig Woodson.
so this is one where I don't know what I did.
Okay.
So what would you grade those safeties last year?
God. That's a good question because Peppers barely played. Duggar really struggled, but like Hawkins and Del Pettis played like way over their heads last season. So collectively, I guess I would say like C minus. But I could hear something lower.
Yeah, I think I just wrote C, and I was gonna I didn't write it down, but I think the thought was ask Doug for the answer. So I did that.
So C for this year. Now you're saying?
Well, they haven't really
I know it's
beefed
tough
it.
because
I
like
took a pick, but
I it's tough without still like a legitimate free safety that you count on. Duggar, I think you have to assume is going to play better now that his ankle is all messed up, and Peppers should be around all season. So like, I think this group's got potential to be like a B, especially after adding Craig Woodson. But it didn't look that way last year. So I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a B minus. But like,
eh,
that seems high
yeah,
considering how they all played last year.
right.
Marcus Epps could help out. It's deep. Like the
Yeah,
Marte Mapu. I don't even know what he does. Like I don't know what happens to Marte Mapu this year, but he's still
right.
there. I don't know.
It's hard to remember now because of everything that happened with Peppers, but what we were all feeling about him as a player going into last year
Yeah, he's like
was
their
that
best defender.
yeah. So I guess we haven't seen him play. It's that's all settled, right? Like
Yeah,
that's over the
right.
court case and
Yeah, I
whatnot.
believe so.
So
Yeah,
theoretically, he'll be back to that again. The pick Craig Woodson, who again I don't BS anyone on my tape study when it
right.
comes to fourth
Of
round
course.
safety picks, but I know that he was not considered a fourth round pick. That was largely considered a reach. So
Right.
I would have low expectations, not on his career at least, but
Yeah.
on his rookie year, there might be some growing pains and some easing in.
I'm blanking on his name right now. Lewis Riddick. I pulled it. He did a tweet. He put out a tweet of his favorite non first round picks for every team, and he put Craig Woodson for the Patriots. And like, I respect the hell out of Lewis Riddick. I think he does a great job. He's gotten like GM interviews.
Mm-hmm.
It felt a little cute when like the other options were Trevion Henderson, Kyle Williams, Jared Wilson, Joshua Farmer, and Braden Swinson. Like maybe that was he was like overcompensating for some of the hate that Craig Woodson's gotten, but like I think as far as value goes, it wasn't especially high for Craig Woodson.
Yeah, I wonder if, and I know the Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore,
Right.
So bear with me. Is there some residual stain on the thought of reaching for a Pac-12 safety?
After Jordan Richards.
Yeah. Do you think that I'm just kind of like, nah, this is not going to work out?
And it just seemed like a very Belichickian pick. It seemed out of the Duron Harmon, Tavon Wilson, Jordan Richards type mold, where you're
Yeah.
taking
Well,
a guy
like I
who
said, though,
everyone
it's like
expects to go in the sixth a little bit earlier.
it's either Vrabel's or whoever in the front office, like a gut pick. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
they liked him when they met him, or
Yeah.
they see
He's a good
something
guy.
that other teams don't see, and that happens in the league. There's
Right.
a ton of fourth round picks that, like Max Crosby was a fourth round pick.
Right.
Like
Oh no,
there's
absolutely.
there's there's guys that are missed in the process. So I'm not like crushing his outlook. I'm just saying if you think he's going to raise the overall level of the safeties this year, that might be a little much.
So let's do this one quick. Special teams. You've got Julian Ashby, Bryce Baringer, Andre Borregales, Parker Romo. Joe Cardona was cut this week. So even special teams.
I did not do special teams because I like football. Uh,
This is
yeah,
tough. Like it's got to be like a C minus probably because you just don't know what these guys are going to look like.
true. We didn't talk about Cardona. What do you? There's a weird thing. Like remember when David Andrews got cut? And I don't know how much you saw it, but I saw some tweets maybe, or maybe radio talk where it was like, "Yeah, get the Belichick guys out," or like,
Right.
and it was kind of like you don't ever want to get rid of a David Andrews from your locker room.
Right.
But it does feel like there's a concerted effort. Like no one was. We do this podcast once or twice a week, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever been like, all right, Doug, it's time they address the long snapper situation. It's just gotten out of control. So it's like this one when they cut Cardona, it's like
It did feel a little purposeful. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah. Like it seemed a little purposeful to get rid of all of the Super Bowl champions for the Patriots. Like on it, Cardona was making a lot of money for a long snapper. That probably played into it, where they like looked at him last year. They were like, "Is this guy really worth $1 million more than the long snapper we can find in the seventh round?" And they just decided like, no, he's not. So that's what my guess would be. But I don't know.
I just think it's such small money
Yeah,
that I
it is,
can't.
especially when they have as much cap space as they do.
I
But like, you do have to make those hard decisions sometimes. Where like, is the value of the player worth what he's making? And
this is I brought this up recently, right? Because when they made Joe Cardona the highest paid long snapper in the league, I went ahead and went to over the cap and ranked all the long snappers. So he's not on the list right now
right,
because he got cut.
yeah.
So the highest paid long snapper right now is Luke Rhodes of the Colts.
Wow,
Guess what his cap hit is?
2 million.
1.56 million. Okay. That makes him the highest paid long snapper. And do you know what the lowest paid long snapper is right now?
800,000.
840,000. Julian Ashby and Patrick Murtaugh and the Jaguars. So you have a difference of from 840 to $700,000 separates the lowest paid long snapper and
Like,
the
I
highest.
guess you do still have to say it's like almost twice as much. And I know it's like I don't know.
Oh,
I don't want to defend it, but like
it's huge for Luke Rhodes, Reed Ferguson, and Tyler Ott to make that money. But for an NFL team, like I was thinking this week when the Falcons got fined what $250 million for the prank call. Was it $250,000, right?
Yeah,
it was $250,000, not billion.
Yeah,
it's like finding an NFL team is like finding a beach sand. It's like telling a beach, like, you owe us 2 handfuls of sand, young man. And the beach is like, dang, take my sand.
Whereas finding Jeff Ulbrich $100,000 is $100,000.
That's a lot of money because your son is a ding dong.
That was a fun exercise. I think you said that you wanted to talk some nonsense. What nonsense did we want to talk?
Well, let's see.
Oh, the new Newfound Glory song gets a solid like B- from me. I think I would say.
Yeah, I don't think it's one of my favorites, but I just like that they're making it, and I like
for sure
a lot of like the gangs back together. I liked Chad being involved, given all he's going through. So it was a nice addition to the week on like a Tuesday, old school. Music comes out on Tuesdays, not Fridays. If you were born in '86, you would know that.
True. That's very true. Did you have an amendment to your top 5 pop punk albums from Monday?
So I'm a data-driven man, as you know. I like to go off the data. So I went to Last FM, which has scrabbled.
Oh yeah.
Like 70% of the music I've listened to since like 2004.
Yep.
So it's got data. And I found this fun. I was like, I'll just go to my most listened to albums overall. All right. So this didn't work out. Do you know what album I've listened to the most?
Which one?
Beggars by Thrice. Okay. not really a pop punk album.
Right.
Second would be the 59 Sound by Gaslight Anthem.
Yep.
And I'll just buzz through 3 through 7 real quick. To Be Everywhere is to Be Nowhere by Thrice, number 3. Palms by Thrice, number 4.
Wow.
The Artist in the Ambulance by Thrice, number 5. The Illusion of Safety by Thrice, 6. And Visu by Thrice, number 7. So that failed. That exercise failed when I just wanted to go by data. So
yeah,
I did find, you tell me, my most listened to pop punk albums, and you tell me if they're pop punk, okay?
Oh yeah.
Crimson by Alkaline Trio.
Yes.
For sure. The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me by Brand New.
No, that's not a pop punk album.
I would agree with you.
It was a band that used to be a pop punk band, but that's no longer a pop punk album.
I agree. Brave Faces, Everyone, Spanish Love Songs.
God, they're so hard to categorize, but I guess I would say yes.
It's like sad boy.
Right.
Sad boy rock. I don't know.
Yeah.
My Chemical Romance, 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. I would call that pop punk.
I think it's pop punk enough. Like it's, yeah, I think that like it's known as emo now, but like it's not, they're not necessarily like an emo band. So I would say that counts.
And then Against Me, Searching for a Former Clarity.
I would say they're a punk band.
Okay, so we're not including that one. So then rounding out my top 5 would be Sticks and Stones and Nothing Gold Can Stay by Newfound Glory. That's just what the data says. I can't argue the data.
No, you can't argue with the data there. So, all right, that's good. I would throw one amendment into mine. So I had last time Dude Ranch Through Being Cool, Newfound Glory self-titled, Dookie, and as a fifth I had From Here to Infirmary by Alkaline Trio. If I'm being honest with myself, I think the fifth would probably actually have to be the Wonder Years Greatest Generation. Because I just listen to that band so much that like they're one of my favorite bands. I think that they're a little bit tough because like I have a hard time picking out their favorite album, but I do think Greatest Generation is probably my favorite of theirs.
I agree. That one did sneak up high on my list, which I discounted. So that was my 10th most listened to album, but I discounted that because that's an album that I only absorbed via streaming, so its numbers are inflated. You know, like Crimson, I listened to
so
on.
You don't have it on compact disc.
Correct. So, like, if that was factored into all these, it's a whole different story. Like Crimson, there's an incalculable number, and like no Blink-182 is on here. Like,
True.
So it's the data is not quite accurate, but I thought I would agree with you on the Greatest Generation finding its way in there.
I think it's just got to, and I love From Here to Infirmary. So like, I might even, I don't know, I might even take out like Dookie for From Here to Infirmary. It's really tough, but
right. Well, Dookie, it's like there's certain songs and albums that become more than what they are.
Right.
And it's hard to listen to it outside of that context. It's hard to listen to Dookie and be like, here's a song. It's just, it is Dookie. Right. You know what I mean? Like you've heard it so many times, front to back.
And some ones that didn't make it but could have, No Use for a Name. I've been very into No Use for a Name my entire life. So they could potentially sneak in. And then what was the one that I was just looking at? And then I lost it. Fall Out Boy, Take This to Your Grave is an all-time pop punk album also. So that would be.
Is that the blue one?
That's the blue one, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Those first 2 albums they had, or those 2, that one and the Cork Tree one.
Yeah.
Those were great. That's all I really know from Fall Out Boy, though, outside of the radio hits.
Right. The songs they play in Bruins games. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And like Big Hero 6, I believe they had a song on there.
And the Spider-Man soundtrack. Okay, yeah. I've got to go. This was fun. We're going to maybe keep doing this a couple times a week, maybe once a week. We'll see what we can get out of it, but I appreciate everyone who's still listening, and we will talk to you guys again next week. Goodbye.